about that, dude?
Oh, this is so epic, bro.
But who I am. Prior to this chapter of my life, I worked in corporate communications. I was a wizard. That's not my term, that's Barry's term. I would never describe myself as that, but Barry introduced me at South by Southwest as a marketing wizard, so I'll roll with it. But I've worked with, my first job was tweeting as the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile on Twitter. So you can read about that in the book too. There's lots of puns. And then we did a lot of stuff in startups, and by we, I mean me, myself, and I, and all of my personalities. And I was a competitive skydiver for 4 years, and then I went back to corporate, and then I got this shocking diagnosis. It's in chapter 8. It's also on the back of the book, so I think I can safely say it. I got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in 2017, and it blew my mind. I was 31 years old, and I was like, what? I don't understand how this happens. And then I learned about the disease and the things that factor into someone getting it, and then I immediately understood why I got it, because I am an expert, I was an expert avoider of feeling feelings. I was really good at doing anything but feeling them. So the diagnosis ended up pushing me into a different career altogether. So I was working at corporate America as a communications person. I got diagnosed the week before fall premieres, and I was working with NBC Universal. I know I have at least one TV person in the house, but if anybody enjoys TV, then fall premieres is when all your favorite shows come back in the fall. It's a very stressful time in the entertainment industry on the promotion side. So I was just stressed beyond belief. I didn't know what to do, didn't know how to manage my life, so I stopped traveling all the time. That was my first attempt to manage my blood sugar. Didn't work. And then I quit my corporate job to join a startup. Any startup employees in the house? Yeah, she's giggling. Yeah, startups are not a stress reducer, pro tip. So don't do that. Thank you, Drew. And that was what brought me here today. So Hiking Your Feelings is my new book. Did anybody read Hiking My Feelings? Look at that. Whoa, thanks, fam. So if you've read Hiking My Feelings, Hiking Your Feelings is a remix. It's not an entirely new situation here. We're going back to the story of the 2 hikes I did on Catalina Island, the first one in 2016, the second in 2018. And this time I'm actually telling you the things I learned on the island and not just telling you the story of how it happened, because in the almost 5 years since my first book was published, I've learned a lot, and we've hosted hundreds of events around the United States. We've introduced thousands of people to the healing power of nature. And when I met this publisher, I was pitching an entirely different book that I'm not going to read to you today. And then at the end of that meeting, I was like, also, I have this cute little book that I wrote myself and I published myself. And also, when I did that, I was a week into my book tour when the pandemic happened. So I really feel like it didn't get enough juice. So for the rest of you that haven't read the first book, start with this one. You can just skip the other one. If you want to listen to me talk about it, the Audible version of the first book's great, but if you're brand new to Sydney Williams and the world that is Hiking My Feelings, this is the one I'm most proud of, and this is the book that I was too scared to write in 2019. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. What are we doing here? First of all, I'm just going to read you a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you about all the cool things that are waiting for you in this book. And before I do, has anybody here been hiking before? Yeah, okay, solid. Anybody here been backpacking before? No. And has anybody here hiked on the Trans-Catalina Trail? Yes. All right. So the Trans-Catalina Trail is the setting for most of this book, and it is a 38.5 mile trail that spans tip to tip across Catalina Island, which is off the coast of Los Angeles, California. In general, I think it's a great first-time backpacking trip, not because it's easy, but because a lot of the what-ifs that scare people about backpacking are handled. There's water provided at every campsite, so you don't have to worry about where to find it. There is a campsite that is designated, so it's not like on some of the longer trails where you just walk all day, and then you're like, I'm tired, let's set up a tent, and then you have to find a place. On the Trans-Catalina Trail, every single campsite is designated, and that's your permit on the island, is your campsite reservation. So while the logistics of getting there are a little bit trickier than your standard hiking trip, you have to take a ferry, for example, it is a lot easier to manage all those what-ifs and the scary things. So you, like me, back in 2016, doing this for the first time, if you're curious about what it is like to hike for multiple days in a row. Do you like sleeping on the ground multiple days in a row? It's a great place to figure that out. So, like I mentioned, the island and the Trans-Catalina Trail is kind of the setting for the story, and I'll read you a little bit of the intro, and then I'm going to tell you about the things that are here to support you in this book. So, this is from the trailhead, which it's like an introduction, but the trailhead is where you start your hike. It's also where you start reading the book. Isn't that cute? Right? Like the theming is silent. So, okay, so the trailhead. Here we go. I'm gonna put on my reader voice. Sydney, my husband said, making his way down the narrow hallway from our bedroom toward the kitchen. Our puggle, Jezebel, was closely following behind, her nails tapping on the linoleum. I made a mental note to trim them on our next day off. I was mindlessly scanning the contents of the refrigerator, trying to find something to eat before we went to work. Yeah? I asked. I have some bad news, he paused. I held my breath, feeling time slow down and my chest start to tighten as I waited for him to finish. The pause felt like an entire lifetime, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Chris killed himself. Time stood still. Everything moved in slow motion. I'd been holding my breath, but now I felt like I couldn't breathe at all. I stood up straight and closed the refrigerator door, feeling the cold air whoosh out on my shins as it squished shut. I reluctantly turned towards Barry. Are you serious? I asked, hoping it wasn't true and that I'd misheard him. He nodded. I let out a violent exhale as I crumpled to the floor. The light blue linoleum was cold on my legs, sending a chill through my entire body and taking my breath away once more. I looked up at Barry, my eyes wide with disbelief. I couldn't find words. While I was a pile on the floor, Jezebel started licking my face and hopping all over me. Barry knew I wasn't getting up anytime soon, so he sat on the floor and held me. The second his arms were around me, all my defenses came crashing down, and I started wailing, sobbing, gasping for breath. Soon enough, both of us were crying. Jezebel stayed close. Chris was one of her favorite humans, too. I was still grieving Chris and many other losses a couple years later as I sat bobbing on a boat, staring at Santa Catalina off the coast of Los Angeles, California. Barry and I were going to start hiking the Trans-Catalina Trail, a 38.5-mile backpacking route that spans the island. This was my first backpacking trip, and as I looked at the island looming in the distance, I wondered if I would be able to make it across in one piece. Spoiler alert, I did. I'm here, like I'm reading to you. For years, I'd been a competitive skydiver and in great shape, but those days were over. Working at a standing desk had been the extent of my physical activity lately. When Barry suggested this trip, I had questioned my abilities, but he swooped in with logic and reasoning. He told me this would be hard and reminded me that despite the difficulty, we would just be walking, something I had been doing with some degree of success since I was a toddler. Looking back, the 2 years leading up to that trip were devastating, but at the time I had no grasp on the depths of my despair. I was highly functional and able to work, yet at the same time, I was firmly planted in my unhealthy coping mechanisms. I had exactly zero awareness about how proficient I was at doing anything but feeling my feelings. In this book, I'm going to share about how I went from engaging in negative self-talk about myself and my body to loving all of me. About how I shifted my coping mechanisms from eating and drinking my feelings to hiking my feelings, and how you can learn to hike your feelings too. Although Catalina is famous for its beautiful ocean views and rugged backcountry, the gift of that first hike, and the second one a year and a half later, was not just my appreciation of the outer wilderness I climbed, stumbled, and trudged through, but the exploration of my own inner wilderness. These were life-changing experiences that helped me heal my mind and body from trauma and disease. You have a wilderness in you too, and in this book, I'm going to offer a framework to help you blaze your own trail to self-love and healing. Boom. That's about all I can handle for reading from a page, because I committed to reading an entire chapter in Austin last weekend. And I'm doing this to myself. And I'm looking up and I'm like, let me just break the story with a quick joke, but I'm gonna dive all the way back in. So I don't wanna do that tonight. But I do wanna walk through what is available in this book and what I mean by hiking your feelings. So first of all, in order to get the most out of this experience, you're gonna have to get outside. Now, do you need to go on a backpacking trip right away? No, and in fact, I would argue you probably should not. I would not recommend my path of getting outdoorsy to anybody. I went from being drunk on patios, that kind of outdoorsy, to Blister City with no training whatsoever and just going for it with nothing but delusional confidence in about 35 pounds of stuff on my back. So I don't recommend that path necessarily. So when I say get outside, even when I say take a hike, what is hiking? To you, what is hiking? Ash, what's a hike versus walking?
You want the technical or more emotional definition?
Yes. There is no difference, right? For the most part.
It's learning to love the suck, embracing the suck, and doing it while you're surrounded by the most beautiful things you've ever seen.
There you go. That's a sell for hiking. So I get this question a lot, especially lately. People are like, what is the difference between hiking and walking? And to Barry's point, there isn't one, I don't think. Hiking is the same thing as walking, except sometimes the walking is harder. And sometimes it's on uneven terrain. And sometimes you've got a lot of stuff strapped to your back. But ultimately, this whole journey started, while it started with a backpacking trip because I was delusional and I thought I could do that, it's also the thing that has kept me through it, and the way that I laddered up once I figured out that you should probably train for things was starting by walking around my neighborhood. And to that point, like, an urban hike is just as valuable, and I've proven this to myself, your mileage may vary, but I started in rugged backcountry wilderness, and then I was like, wait a minute, is it the fact that I'm so far away from civilization that gives me everything that I'm getting from this experience, or is it possible that I could have the same kind of benefits from like an urban environment, nearby nature, like city parks? And as it turns out, I get the same from both. They're different. It's a completely different experience to go far out into the backcountry of like Sequoia, Kings Canyon, Yosemite National Park, but it's just as beneficial to spend time in an urban environment. We hiked 220 miles around the city of Chicago in 2021. That's not rugged, remote wilderness. Like, I ate my way around the city, and I will recommend that trail to anybody that's going on a walking tour of Chicago. It's the way to go. Deep dish doesn't matter when you're hiking 17 miles a day. It's fantastic. So on that point, like, walking and hiking, to me, it's the same motion, and obviously, like, you do want to train, and I don't want to understate the importance of that. But I also think that the outdoor industry and just the outdoor culture in general makes you feel like you have to have all the right gear and you have to go out for days at a time or it doesn't count. And if it's not hard, then it doesn't count. I get just as much joy out of walking on Sunset Cliffs Boulevard in Ocean Beach along the edge of a continent as I do being 4 days away from help in the rugged backcountry of some of our most beautiful national parks. I genuinely get the same kinds of benefits. Now, do I go out with the same intention for everything? No. Sometimes I just go walking. Sometimes I'm like, I need to heal stuff. And in fact, for the first 40 hikes I did in 2019 and 2018 after this like book and the discovery of hiking my feelings, I walked, I'm gonna walk with me here. California, right? We're going up the coast. Oregon, Washington, some other stuff in the middle, Idaho, Wyoming, and then Montana. It took me to get to Montana before I wasn't crying on a trail. It was in Montana where I was like, oh, you mean people hike for fun? Like, you can go out there with the intention of hiking and healing, or you can just go out there and be open to whatever the trail gives you. But the thing that's the most common thread amongst all the things that we discuss in our programs in this book is that you disconnect from the distractions of your everyday life. And whatever that means for you may vary. But for me, that meant no audiobooks, no podcasts, no movies, no TV, no music even, just walking with nothing distracting me. And I almost stopped doing that because it was terrifying. To be alone with your thoughts after successfully navigating away from them for my, entire life up until this point was horrifying. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about this book, is because like I hear that from people all over the country. They're like, that sounds awesome, except you're asking me to do something that makes me physically uncomfortable in an environment that I do not feel connected to, because as a society, we are so disconnected from nature. It makes total sense that we're terrified of it from a nature perspective. Like, we are so far removed from the world that we came from. Like, I saw a poster on my first speaking tour back in 2019. I was in Sacramento, California, in an REI store, and they had this ginormous poster on the wall, and it said the average American spends 90% of their life indoors. That's from a study that was done before the pandemic. Imagine what that means. Like, let's think about that, right? Like, we wake up in our house, hopefully we have shelter. We get in a car or on public transportation, some other kind of shelter. We go to an office. This was pre-pandemic. Like, imagine being in an office. So like, you're in your box, and then you get in another box, and then you go to work at the box, and then you might go to the gym, which is also a box, or if you happen to have a career that allows you to work outside, then none of this applies to you. But if you're like the average American, 90% of your life, the only time you're gonna see sun is like, or fresh air is like your walk from this box, this beautiful bookstore box, to your car. And that's it. So like to actively choose to spend time outside is foreign to most of us, just by the culture that we live in. So it makes sense that we're scared of that. But I think the bigger thing that we're scared of is that being alone with our thoughts thing. And that's where this book comes in. So when I talk about hiking, in the community itself, like in the hiking community, if you become an outdoorsy person and you're part of the community, a phrase that we say a lot is hike your own hike. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind here. Similar to what we're saying about not having to go out on a multi-day trip to experience the healing power of nature, hiking your own hike is something that's applicable here on the trail and in life. Like, it's full of ups and downs and twists and turns, and you never really know where it's gonna go, but also you don't just like get to the top of the mountain, call it healed mountain, and then never leave. Like, you don't just build a cabin at the summit and stay there. Like, you gotta go through all the things. So we like to say hike your own hike. So if we're talking about what's available to you in this chapter, or in this book, so the story, the through line, is the 2 hikes I did on Catalina Island and all the lessons learned along the way. The front part of each chapter is just that. We're talking about where I was, what I was dealing with. Sometimes it's way too much detail. You'll know what I mean when you get to chapter 4, chapter 8, and chapter 11. You'll be like, that's a lot, Sydney, thank you. But my hope is that if you never even get past, like if you read up until the back sections of each chapter, and you never like take any of the lessons that I offer, or the activities that I offer, my hope is that at the very least you'll read this and you'll be inspired. To do what? I don't know. Anything you want, because like if nothing else, I hope that this idea, like hiking my feelings, which is now the name of our organization, it's no longer the name of the book, we changed that. But hiking my feelings started as an idea on top of a mountain, and it's now turned into 2 books, a vibrant community full of heart-centered adventurers that just want to be human and have a place to do that. Incredible environmental stewardship projects that we do to help connect the dots between inner wilderness and outer wilderness. Like, it's turned into so much from an idea. So if nothing else, I hope that like you're like, if this chick can do all this, I can do all this. Because that's how I got inspired to do what I'm doing. There was a musician that I knew that like he writes all of his own music, he produces all of his own stuff, and I was like, he didn't wait for a label. Like, he didn't wait for industry validation. He just started making music, and he's crushing. Why? Like, I don't make music, but like, how can I replicate that for myself? So if nothing else, I hope that this inspires you to go do whatever it is you want to do. That thing that you're already thinking about because I said it, that's the thing you should go do after you read this book. So now, if you're going to stick around and you're like, this story's awesome, I'm going to hang with her, let's keep reading, then each chapter has a bunch of different sections. And this, for the people that read the old book, this is where the good stuff comes in. This is the stuff that I should have included in 2019, but I was like, I don't know. I don't have letters after my name. And like, never mind that I actually lived this experience and it was all mine, and I definitely did all of these things. I don't feel confident enough to write about my own lived experience. So now here we are, and I did it. So each chapter, after I tell my story and I get you up to speed on like the brutality that is the Trans-Catalina Trail. Sorry, I know you're hiking it soon, but it's gonna be lovely. You'll have a wonderful time. Really working hard on selling this hike. So much fun. So each chapter has a section called Trail of Life, and that's inspired by the cover of the book. If you'll look, each of these little things, these are like my Easter eggs. If I was Taylor Swift, this would be my mastermind situation, where like each picture has a thing and it ties into the chapter. So the Trail of Life is our self-reflection framework. It's the first activity that we teach in any of our programs, any of our events, and it is exactly what it sounds like. The Trail of Life is how we use hiking as a metaphor for life. So what has happened on your trail of life? What I'm about to tell you in 288 pages, what happened on mine. So the Trail of Life is the section of each chapter where we zoom out from my experience, and I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not the first person to find healing in nature. This might be shocking, but I'm not. In fact, humans have been healing in nature since time immemorial, like for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And though I wasn't the first or only person to heal in nature, I sure did feel like I was, because I wasn't in community with people that had these kinds of experiences or spoke about the outdoors in this way. So the Trail of Life is like, all right, chapter 1, we're talking about grief and loss. Let's all talk about grief and loss. Not just my grief and loss, but everybody's grief and loss. And then we also have a section called Mindful Miles. And my intention for the Mindful Miles section in each chapter is as follows. 1, if you like journaling, buckle up. I got so many prompts for you. You're going to be journaling till you die. Other than that, I also love using these as prompts for discussion, either as a way to turn a hike into a mindful, moving meditation by myself. So if I'm like, okay, I've got a doozy of a day, and I just need to unpack it. Let me find a journal prompt. And how we are told to return to the breath during like a seated meditation where your mind gets squirrely. They're like, return to the breath, you'll be fine. We say return to the question, so return to the topic at hand. And also these are really great for group discussions. So if you're looking to start a book club, I already did all the work for you. You're welcome. And also, if you want to go out on a hike, and you want to hike with your friends, and like everybody's been through some stuff. P.S. We've all been through a ginormous trauma. It was called the pandemic, and nobody's talking about it like it's not a problem. We all survived something that was pretty horrible, let alone what's happened on our trail of life for everybody in this room. Like the worst day of my life and the worst day of all y'all's lives are going to be very different, but we all have at least one thing in common, and that's that we're here to talk about it. We have survived every hard day that we've been dealt, and now we can talk about it. And even better yet, if we get outside with other people and we're able to have these conversations on the trail with each other, then we're getting to know each other in a really deep and profound and beautiful way. And one of the things that I love most about hiking for facilitating difficult conversations, you're spending, unless you're like hiking in Burbank, which is like where my first group hike was ever, and we were hiking on a fire road. So it was like 10 of us walking across in a line, just glorious. But like, for the most part, if you're like walking single file, you don't have to look at the person that you're having a difficult conversation with. So you can say all the things you want to say. I have very expressive face. I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but my eyes roll hard, uncontrollably. I have no filter for my face. So if Barry's got something to say and I don't like it, doesn't matter because he can't see it. So I'm just like, with like the eye roll, like the biggest eye roll you've ever seen in your life. So pro tip, use the Mindful Miles section to self-reflect, but also to have really powerful, meaningful conversations with the people that you care about, that you're also going to take hiking. And then the last section of each chapter is called Next Steps. And I really think that there's a lot to be gained from this book. And I'm not just saying that because I lived it and that I wrote it and that I'd like for you to benefit from it too, but like this has worked for me. I've seen it work for other people. There's people sitting in these chairs that this has worked for. And the next steps is, it's pretty genius because it's so obvious. It's the next steps you can take to heal from the topic that the chapter is about. So I'll give you a spoiler. Chapter 1, you only get so many sunsets. It's about grief and loss. It's primarily named after my friend Adam, who, after the day full of jumping out of planes, we would stop as the sun sets. He'd say, you only get so many sunsets. And for the rest of my life, till the day I die, I will tell that story because I want, 1, everybody to pause and enjoy a sunset. But 2, it's just a really beautiful reminder that we don't have a lot of time on this planet. And when we go out into nature and we're spending time with like rocks that are millions of years old or trees that are thousands of years old, it really puts life into perspective how small we are and how little time we have. So the next step section for chapter 1 is to create a day of remembrance. When Adam passed away in 2014, one of my, I don't want to say favorite things to do because my favorite thing to do would be to still have him on this planet, but one of my favorite things to do in the absence of his physical body is to go get his favorite sandwich from Barron's Market, which is the turkey with the raspberry chipotle sauce on it. So good. And then take it out to Sunset Cliffs and just go sit and eat the sandwich because he said you only get so many sunsets. So I would just go watch a sunset with my buddy Adam and eat a sandwich. In doing that, 1, just by thinking, oh God, the death anniversary or his birthday is coming up, I'm already being mindful, right? And then I'm like, oh, I need to make sure that I get to the store in time to get the sandwich. Mindfulness. I go sit and I pick the perfect spot on Sunset Cliffs to remember my friend. Mindfulness. Before I wasn't even hiking and I'm being mindful. Wow, that's so neat. But also, it gives you an opportunity to think about these people that deeply impacted our lives. The people that, whether you've known them for 5 minutes or 5 years or your entire life, it doesn't matter. The depth of connection isn't exclusively limited to how long we've known somebody. So to give yourself the opportunity to have a day of remembrance, then you can go and have your own little ritual where you can remember all of your lovely people, and then you can call somebody that knows that person and be like, remember how Adam used to just like really mess it up when he was driving my car? Remember how he used to bottom out my Civic because he had no idea how brakes work? I call his mom and we talk about this stuff like pretty randomly. But like, it's just such a nice way to kind of come back into yourself, to remember the people that have made you who you are, and then to share their memory and their legacy with other people. So that's the next step section. And then there's also, I alluded to the outdoor industry suggesting that you need like 8,000 things to be able to go hike. Let's talk about that real quick. One, get some good shoes. The ones you have on, assuming you're not wearing heels, they're probably fine for your first hike. So get some shoes. Sneakers are fine. And then if you want to ladder up, I recommend trail runners over hiking boots, because hiking boots take forever to break in. And they're just not that comfortable. So what else you'll need though? So bring some water, especially, God, if any of you come out to Three Sisters and it's more than 70 degrees in East County, just turn around and go home. One, the hike is too short for you to drive that far and sweat to death. Two, bring water. Because we see people hiking out there with 6 packs of White Claw. Like, do not do that. So bring your water, wear your shoes, right? That's what I say every time, and they still keep doing it. You think they'd get tired of being laughed at, but they don't. So bring your shoes, bring your water, bring a snack. You'll want a map or some kind of app, and make sure your phone's charged. There's a list. They call it the 10 essentials. But I think more important than that is the things that we already possess between these 2 ears, in this little skull we got here. We have traits and skills that we bring with us everywhere we go that are more important, I think, than the list of the things that you need to buy to have a healing experience in nature. What are those things? One, curiosity. Curiosity is going to kill cats, apparently, but also make your life more fun in the meantime. And the reason that I say that is because the curiosity for me that saved this whole experience and kept me from being like, I don't want to do this ever again, was when my body started to like freak out and I was like, wow, my legs are really sore. Maybe if I did something other than standing at my standing desk before embarking on a 6-day backpacking adventure, maybe this would be a more positive experience. I wasn't judging myself, and that's the difference that I want to call out here. I was curious about why my body was telling me the things that it was. Why was I eating and drinking my feelings before I started hiking my feelings? Good question. I'm curious. I'm going to find out. And on the trail, without the distractions, that's where I was able to hear that inner voice and come to those answers. Next, self-trust. That's as simple as it sounds. You got to have self-trust. Because if you don't know who you are, where you've been, what you're doing, then I'm not going to say don't go for a hike, but I'm saying you're going to find out when you go on a hike. Because these are the bodies that we live in every day. And unless you are actively and compassionately connected to the body that you call home, this will bring up a lot for you. There's no way it can't. Between the physical sensations of your legs burning or your lungs burning or sweating profusely or whatever feels uncomfortable, using muscles that you haven't used before because you're not walking on flat ground, you got to be able to trust yourself. So if you're like, I am in pain, don't like berate yourself and be like, suck it up, cupcake, and like keep hiking. Like, stop and listen and pay attention. And then the last one, patience. Like, this process is not pretty. Hiking your feelings looks like a lot of fun on Instagram. It's not always fun. I will be completely honest. The work that we do is the hardest work I've ever done. And it is still to this day. Like, our events are plug and play. I can tell this story with my eyes closed, my hands tied behind my back. But it really, truly is a process. And I got a postcard from my best friend once that said, trust the process. I was like, what is the process and why do I have to trust it? And why is that so hard? This is so difficult. But truly, like with the patience part, we got nothing else to do. As Barry said on our first backpacking trip, he was like, if you want to get to this campground before the lights go down, we got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, no matter how hard it is. And that's the most beautiful metaphor for life. Like, I genuinely did not know if we would make it to March 12th. From a financial perspective, from an emotional perspective, from a physical perspective, the rain, I might as well have been living underground. Because like when I'm not hiking, when I'm not seeing sunshine, and we live in San Diego, so we're spoiled, right? Like we get 72 and sunny most of the time, and when it's not, boy howdy, seasonal affective disorder exists, and I was living it. I was the poster child for like, this is what happens when a girl solar powered is stuck in the rain for weeks on end. It's not fun. I genuinely didn't know if we'd get here, but we got here because we have patience, because we have trust, and because we kept putting one foot in front of the other. So as you read this book, the things that I will suggest, whenever you can, if you find yourself getting activated by something that I'm sharing, because this book is a trigger fest, I'm just going to lay it out there. And not like I'm going to describe every graphic depiction of the things I've been through. I will not do that to you. But topically, we're talking about veteran suicide. We're talking about sudden death from tragically aggressive cancer. We're talking about 23 friends I lost in this 4 years that I was jumping out of planes. 23 of my friends died suddenly, just no warning whatsoever. We're talking about sexual assault. We're talking about all kinds of things. So if you can get through the book, and as you read, and if you find yourself seeing some of your story in mine, jot some notes down, whether that's in a journal or in the margins of the book, like write down like what it was that I said that got you feeling some type of way. And then as you get done with the book or as you move through chapters, like pay attention to where you're jotting the notes down. It's like leaving yourself breadcrumbs. So you can just Goldilocks, is it Goldilocks? Robin Hood? Who leaves the crumbs? I don't know. Metaphor is gone, analogy is trash. But like you're leaving yourself breadcrumbs so you can see like, well, that's funny. Every time Sydney says something about her body, I freak out. That could indicate that maybe there's some healing to be done there. And I think when it comes to this book and what we're doing and how this all works, the most important thing that I got out of this was as follows. I tried everything to heal before I found hiking. I did meditations. I read every Brené Brown book that was ever written twice. I found all the self-help books, like See Also, Brené Brown and. I did journaling. I signed up for courses, like everything I could possibly think of. I didn't have access to therapy for the longest time. And when I had access, I was terrified of it because I thought that was like sitting on a couch and some lady telling me how broken I was. Girl, I know I'm broken. That's why I'm here. And when I was ready for therapy, I couldn't afford it. So I tried all these other things, just kind of like out on the perimeter of healing. And every time I would sit down in a meditation or something, or I'd be journaling about a thing I'm trying to heal from, I would get activated to the point of shutdown. My body would go into fight or flight. I would not be able to do anything else other than freak out and cry and shut it all the way down. And then I wouldn't heal from that thing. I tried this for 15, 20 years. I've been trying to heal from the things I've been through. And it wasn't until I went hiking that I had somewhere to put that energy. Because now I had all these tools in my toolbox that I never really got to use because I would always shut down in the pursuit of using them. But on a ridgeline, when all of my body image issues are coming up and I get to like stomp it out up the trail, then I'm able to move through the thing that had previously shut me down and get to the other side of that. And on the other side of that is where the healing comes in. And if there's one thing that I could say, when we are going through any kind of journey like this sounds so cliche, and if this makes you want to vom in your mouth, trust me, I've been there. We always have a choice. And that phrase, you have a choice, the choice is yours. It's a great song by Stick Figure, slightly stupid. That's just like how I like woke up and was like, oh my God, I have choices. This is so bizarre. When you realize that you have a choice and that you're not being gaslit into believing that you have choices, we can always choose love or fear. And whenever you can, I would recommend choosing love over fear, because throughout this book, you will see it time and time again. When body image issues came up, I chose love for myself over the fear of the stigma of being a fat woman in America. When I got diagnosed with diabetes, I chose love for myself over the fear of what would happen if I let that disease run rampant in my life. And every time I get to share this story, I'm choosing the love for myself and for the community that we've built. A lot of you are sitting in this room, and it's very nice for my heart to see. I'm choosing love for myself over the fear of what happens when a woman stands up and speaks her truth. And I would say, especially today, in the climate that we find ourselves in, with bodily autonomy being just destroyed, and all the things that are happening around the world in multiple cultures, just the uprising of all these horrible systems that very clearly need to be broken down and destroyed. We can choose love for ourselves and for each other over the fear of what happens if we listen to what these people are saying that tries to divide us, because ultimately we are all connected, and indigenous cultures have been living this way since time immemorial. We are all relatives. The trees are not separate from us. They are our brothers, sisters, cousins, aunts, and uncles. All of us in this room are connected, and we are all so responsible for ourselves first and foremost, and that's why this healing is important, because your healing is your responsibility, but we are responsible for the health of each other and this planet. And if there's one thing, aside from like, I want you to read the book and like get inspired and like rock your life and go do whatever your hiking my feelings is, I just really believe that, and I've seen it over and over and over again, while this is a deeply personal journey, we shouldn't and we don't have to do this alone. And the ripple effect that we will experience from our own healing that goes out into our communities, every single person we touch when we're having a good day, that ripple effect knows no end. And the same can be true for the ripple effect of like hate and other terrible things, whether that's hate for yourself and your body or hate for other people because somebody told you that you should. When we heal ourselves, we are doing the work to heal our communities and our ancestors and everything that has been passed down to us. So I could keep talking for like 18 hours, but I'm gonna stop. And I'd love to answer questions. Do I do questions now, Mary? Is that how this works? Second time. Brand new. Okay, so if you have questions, I'm just gonna sit here and drink my water.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So wait, when do so you're gonna come next week and be like, you made number one.
And up until like Sunday, I was like, I made a point every morning. I was like, Barry, I'm so proud of my emotional regulation. I haven't done the nosedive. Like, I am just cool as a cucumber. Like,
You had to jinx it, didn't you?
Yeah. It's like riding those waves. And then like I properly PMS'd into nosedive of I nosedived into PMS. And like by the time Tuesday came around, like I woke up and I was just like weepy. And then I kind of like weeped all the way down the mountain. And then I was like,
Are we going to talk about why?
Yeah, you want to talk about why?
We can touch upon it.
Okay.
I don't want to go into too much detail.
Okay, yeah, you hit it.
But that I might be moving on
Yeah.
from hiking my feelings.
Yeah, so I didn't know if I could say that. Okay, I'll say it.